Are you wondering how to prepare for a Deloitte case interview? Good news, you're in the right place. We've prepared thousands of people for Deloitte case interviews over the last 15 years. And look, Deloitte is an amazing firm, the big mama of all of the major global consulting firms with over $60 billion in total revenues. Deloitte has a massive global presence, opportunities across every possibility of any type of consulting work, and a great brand name, amazing benefits, amazing training, and more. We cannot be bigger fans of Deloitte. But their Deloitte interview process reflects the thoughtfulness and the data-driven nature of the firm itself. And it's really important that you understand that this is a case interview that's not like other case interviews. It's not even like McKinsey, Bain, and BCG case interviews. This is a different beast altogether. And so when you're preparing for the Deloitte case interview, you have to think differently. Now, we have already put together content on the Deloitte fit and informational interviews. Those kinds of interviews that are more conversational and story-driven, you also need to prepare for. But our focus in this video is really on the Deloitte case interview. Let's dive in. First, let's talk about the Deloitte interview process, just so you know what you're getting yourself into. At the beginning of the Deloitte interview process, there's a resume screen. At Deloitte, many of these resume screens are done by recruiters. And so it's a little different than in some of the MBB firms that have teams of professionals that focus on this. Therefore, you often will reach out to and build relationships with recruiters, although the professionals still have referrals in their back pocket, so don't ignore them in your networking process. If you get a first round interview, you can generally expect that you'll have a minimum of 2 interviews. And usually where MBB blends informational and case, Deloitte will split it out. They'll tell you beforehand what the actual structure is. But if they don't tell you, what you can expect is that likely you'll have one interview, 30 to 45 minutes, that's focused on fit and conversational interviews. And the other interview, 30 to 45 minutes, that's focused on the case. In the second round of interviews, Deloitte switches gears in a different way than other firms do. They really focus on making sure that you're right for the whole organization. So while you'll usually have one case interview and one fit interview in the final round, they also, in many instances and many years, will add a group interview as well. This is one of the most common formats at Deloitte and one of the most likely places that you'll see group interviews. So you need to be ready for the group interview on top of the standard case interview and the fit and behavioral interview. In addition, you'll find that the tone of a Deloitte final round interview is a little less serious and more collegial than at MBB firms. Usually, they're focused on selling you on Deloitte as much as you are on selling them on your skills and experience. There are 5 main skills that Deloitte is looking for inside the case interview, and the Deloitte case interview incorporates these skills by asking you questions in a specific way. The first one is that they're looking for logical thinking. Deloitte asks a number of creative brainstorming questions where they expect for you to go through logical lists as a response. If your response is a paragraph, it will not come across in the same punchy, clear way that Deloitte is looking for. Number 2, Deloitte is looking for great problem solving. They're looking for you to embrace uncertainty, break down big problems into small pieces. This begins at the beginning of the case through your structure, and it continues throughout those creative brainstorming parts. But you have to keep a focus in a Deloitte case on tying every component of the case back to the beginning. Number 3, Deloitte cases do focus on analytical pieces and mental math. You're going to find fewer exhibits and fewer charts at Deloitte than at a place like, for example, Bain. But you will find that they're going to have you work through the math from beginning to end because, of course, analytics and data analysis will be a part of your everyday job. Number 4, Deloitte is looking for communication. They look for people who have warmth, relatability, and the ability to translate their ideas into action inside the interview. Deloitte always has a niceness factor inside the interview where they're looking for people who are sharp, but also clear and relatable. And number 5, Deloitte looks for executive presence. Look, Deloitte is a trusted brand, trusted by people all over the world. In the first year and your second year, when you're in your 20s or your 30s, you're going to be sitting with people who are in their 50s and their 60s with authority and experience. You need to be able to hold your own in those conversations. So Deloitte is looking for that intangible gravitas that you can bring to the interview. Now, the good news is that all 5 of these things you can practice when you're talking about how to prepare for the Deloitte interview. Let's walk through some of those steps. There are 7 keys to solving Deloitte case interviews. If you follow all 7 of these, not only are you going to be better at Deloitte interviews, but you'll also be better at other Big 4 interviews, as well as interviews for some of the top firms in the world, like McKinsey, Bain, and BCG. Number 1, you have to understand the problem that you're being asked to solve. Deloitte has very specific case interviews, often tailored to the very specific task of a very specific organization. If you're interviewing for the Deloitte federal practice, you're probably not going to get a question about hamburgers, but you need to understand, what does the Deloitte federal practice do? How do they solve their problems? What frameworks do they use? The good news is that you can ask for these frameworks and concepts, even practice interviews, and recruiters will often share them with you before the interview. So make sure that you know exactly what the branches that you're interviewing for is doing, and then how they look at problems. If you look at them through that lens, then solving the problem strategically is going to be much easier. Number 2, have a solid note-taking strategy. One of the big hurdles inside Deloitte interviews is that when you're starting at the beginning of the interview, you often will just begin to talk. They're conversational. But if you don't have a solid note-taking strategy, you'll often get lost for what the main point was of the interview, as well as in your analytics. You need to practice not just doing case interviews, but actually rewriting your notes. If you do that for Deloitte interviews, you'll have a great note-taking strategy going in. Number 3, you have to develop a very MECE framework. Deloitte is big on using MECE as a concept. Now, if you've never heard of MECE before, it stands for mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. Deloitte really emphasizes, even more than MBB firms, the collectively exhaustive piece of your framework. They want to know that you're looking at everything, overturning every stone. Deloitte cases are longer on average than MBB firm cases. They're very comprehensive with the organizations that they work with. And you'll find that there's some real added benefit to being incredibly thorough and comprehensive in your structured approach. Number 4, McKinsey really focuses on talking through your math problems, but they're okay with you taking some time to work through them for accuracy. Not so at Deloitte. At Deloitte, you need to verbalize your math process as you're working through the case. It is essential that you're connecting with your interviewer as you're doing the math, not just asking for sideline time to work through it and then coming back. So it's really important that you practice this process in your case interview preparation for Deloitte. Number 5, make sure that you synthesize your findings. It's important for Deloitte that not only you come up with the right answers or that you come up with options, but that you're able to prioritize. Deloitte works with complicated organizations with tremendous and often conflicting objectives. Your job at Deloitte is going to be to help them wade through those objectives and to isolate opportunities and then pursue them. Make sure that you're focusing on the bigger picture. Number 6, it's really important that you lead yourself through the Deloitte interview. Deloitte interviews are traditionally interviewee-led. So if you've practiced, for example, McKinsey interviews, you might not be ready to direct yourself through a Deloitte case. One of the good things about Deloitte is that you are able to self-direct. You're often given tremendous trust and a lot of responsibility at a very young age, but you have to demonstrate in the case interview that you can handle that by not losing sight of the problem and by focusing on the big picture and the answer. Number 7, you need to end with a strong recommendation. Deloitte is confident. After all, they're the big mama on the block. And so you need to come in at the end and end your case with a flourish. Deloitte doesn't like it when you come up with 3 options at the end. Well, we could do this or this or this. They want an answer, they want focus, and they want direction. You need to reflect the cultural values of the firm, even when you're concluding the case. Now, once you know what you need to do and what the interview process is like for the Deloitte case interview, it's important for you to know how to prepare. And the good news is at Management Consulted, we can help. You can walk through our Black Belt program, which includes, if you want it, a resume and a cover letter, but definitely at least 8 hours of interviews, lots of digital programming for you to practice outside of your interviews, a case library with over 500 cases and more. We would love to help you prepare specifically for your Deloitte interview, and we have members on our team who have prepared thousands of candidates to go into Deloitte interviews. If you're interested in having support for your Deloitte case interview, we would love to walk with you through the process.